Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I thought we'd actually do an orchid video today. You know, apparently it's an orchid channel and there should be some orchids now and again. You must appreciate I am tied up with lots of other things at the moment. At the moment I'm still waiting on a call from the estate agent we're planning to use so that we can get the house on the market. Obviously arrangements for photos and stuff, but all this has to go on, and the orchids at the moment are tending to take a little bit of a back seat, and I can get away with it because of the time of year. We haven't got the heat, so things are not growing as much. But I thought we'd have a look around the bigger Oncidium types. So most of the smaller Oncidium types, not all, are mounted. Some are still in pots, but the larger ones are in pots, basically. And well, we can start up here. That's my phone. I'll be back. Oh, that took a long time. That was the agent who's going to be dealing with the sale of the property, marketing of the property, and we're going to run with their recommended conveyancers as well, because by doing it as a joint package we get a hell of a discount, which is all good stuff. So that was that. Right, what was I actually going to do? We were going to look at the larger Oncidium types. Now the logic why is their stages of growth and potential treatment as far as watering, yeah, and stuff like that is concerned. So some don't need much of a chat because there's nothing going on, and others do. Now what we've got in here is we'll have genuine Oncidiums, we'll have miltonias, we'll have brassica types and actual brassicas, and intergenerics, including some that are not even a known intergeneric, they're just Cambria or houseplant, orchid on the label, you know, that sort of thing. I've got some of those. So we'll start up here. Now this is a miltonia, and this is a spectably hybrid. Yeah, and this, what I'm going to do with each of these, those that have flowered recently, not ones that were bought in bloom, but ones that I've bloomed, so they're my spikes, I'm going to put a pop-up on each one of when the first flowers opened and when the spikes were taken off, when the last flowers go, so that you get an idea of how long they bloomed for, if you see what I mean. Now that doesn't mean each individual bloom lasted that long. The blooming lasted that long, and in some cases that may have been 3 or 4 spikes that came out in stages, but I don't keep the records for each individual spike. Right, so this is Miltonia spectabilis. It's a hybrid, it's not the genuine species. This has recently finished blooming, so this is in a sort of state of hold. It's not doing that much until you look carefully, and then you start thinking, hang on, we've got a new growth coming up there. So this is just thinking about coming back into growth after blooming. But it isn't really in full growth yet. And I think, quite honestly, any new growth that poke out are probably going to just hold for a while, simply because of the low short days, the lack of light effectively. Their gross light value in any 24-hour period is incredibly low, so they're not going to push on. So watering something in a state like this needs care, because it's not only the frequency, it's the amount. Now in the summertime, when you've seen me water, I've done videos, I pour loads of water and it all comes flooding out the bottom. Now this time of year they won't get anywhere near that much. Yeah, they'll more likely to get a trickle round the edge of the pot until it comes out the bottom, but not a full soaking, simply because they won't use it very quickly. And if it stays wet too long, we could start some root rot. Yeah, so the roots are not currently active. They're there, they're functional, but they're not currently growing much. There's plenty of them. And the next thing to consider when a plant's in this state, especially at this time of year, when it's cooler and short days, is what it's in. And then on top of what it's in, how long has it been in it? Yeah. Now this looks like this is quite an old mix for me. It looks like bark, so that will probably be Burnham's bark, looking at it. Yes. It looks like it's got some charcoal, and it's got some sponge rock, giant perlite. That's a mix I have used in the past. So that's what it's in. Now the next thing is, how long's it been in that mix? Because if that mix is over a year old, then it will be holding water a lot longer than if it was only 2 or 3 months old. So all of these things have to be considered before you throw your water on top of your plant during the short days and the cooler temps, if that's what you've got. Not everybody will have the shorter days, or not as short, and some people won't have the cooler temperatures because they're grown in their house, whereas I'm not. So careful with the watering on that one. What I'll do with my pop-up, I'm making work for myself, but I haven't got much else to do today. I'm waiting for my sister to phone my other sister, talk over what I've just discussed with the agent and get back to me so that I can fill the forms in online. So that's that. Right, next big one, and this is a biggie. And this hasn't been repotted since I got it. This came from Burnham's. It's in Burnham's bark. And I know, Sarah, with a plant like this, that's probably got something like that of those polystyrene chunks in the bottom for crocking, because it's not a heavy pot, so the crocking will be polystyrene. It weighs nothing, doesn't it? Doesn't break down either. So this is another miltonia. This is Regnellii, and this is the actual species, this one, not a hybrid. And what's this one up to? Well, finished blooming, you'll have the pop-up, and I'll add on to the pop-up when it was last repotted, so that you can see how long it's been in the pot. Now I can't do that with this one, can I? Because I haven't repotted it yet. But I can say when I got it, but what I don't know is how long before then it was repotted. But knowing Sarah, there were a lot of these for sale when I got it, so the chances are that was one of her, let's split up some of those giant plants and sell them on in small, medium and large at the associated prices. This was probably one of the larger ones. But as far as what this one's up to, it's bloomed. So what I'm looking for is new growths, actual physical new growths that are pushing on. And at the moment, we've just got that one. Now this new growth pushed on while it was in bloom. Yeah? But it's just the one at the moment. Yeah, that's got a bloom spike on. So again, this is effectively inactive. And this has got an awful lot of roots out the top of the pot, running round the outside above the bark. It is a little bit of a climber. You know, you can see the latest growths are actually above the media, all of them. So you know, there's aerial roots all over the place. When the new growth pushes on and I've got some new roots, that will get repotted. But not until then. And whatever time of year that is, that's when it'll get repotted. And it might well get divided at that time, because it's heading off in 1, 2, 3, 4 directions. That's what I said, that one's vertical, it's coming up the middle of the plant. And it's already that high up. Yeah? Well, how high is the next one going to be? Next one's going to be up here somewhere, miles away from the media. So that's that one. And the other one on this shelf is, this is classed as an Oncidium. You can look up what the hell the mix is there, but it's an intergeneric basically. And the fact that it starts with on, it's part Oncidium, and part something else, Oncidium. This is Wildcat Bobcat. Currently not in active growth, but even though it's still producing this spike, there's a lot of more growing to do on this spike. These buds have got to get quite a bit bigger than this before they actually open. And they have slowed up, yeah? So they're not pushing on as well as they once were. But nonetheless, it is pushing on. As far as growth in the pot is concerned, there isn't any. But there is still some swelling of the latest bulb going on. So it is gradually increasing in size. But there's no leaf growth and no active roots at the moment. And care needs taking with the watering based on what it's in. Now this has got quite a bit of cocoa husk in it, which does hold more moisture. It's there for a reason. When it's actively growing, it's a drinker, yeah? As are most Oncidium types. But this time of year, no, it's not, because it's not doing much growing at all, and it's got a media that holds a fair bit of water. So this gets watered very carefully. Gets a small amount, and depending on how frequently I do my pots, it might get missed, so it might miss one out. If I still think it's damp down here, then it might get missed out. So that's that one. But notice they're all in a similar position as far as watering is concerned. It's a matter of what they're in, how long they've been in it, and to a degree, it even matters how big the pot is. If the pot is a little oversized for the plant, for the root system, then you've got to be extra careful with the watering. If the root system completely fills the pot, then you can pour more in, because it'll use it. Yeah. So that's that shelf done. A little bit of a mix. That was 2 miltonias, 1 hybrid, 1 species, and an Oncidium. Right, if we come down on this shelf next, I'm only doing bigger ones, I'm not doing small ones. Now this is an I don't know what you are. I do indirectly. When I went to Burnham's, I bought 2 odontoglossum types that were almost identical. They're not the same, because one of them's got a white lip with orange markings, and the other one's got a white lip with a single red dot. That's quite a difference, and that's not an odd flower, that's how they were on the spike, so they are different. Trouble is, I didn't mark which one was which. Now this one is, what's this one doing? This one is pushing up a new growth which is almost mature, which isn't going to bloom, and there's no sign of a spike on this plant anywhere. So to all intents and purposes, this isn't doing much. I don't think it's long been in that pot. It's got some active roots, but it's not a fully active root system. So that one just needs a bit of care, you know, but it's a large plant in a relatively small pot. So in theory, it's less easy to overwater that and get it soggy, because it's a much smaller pot for the size of the plant. That's why I always say, you know, the smaller pots just work better. But when they're drinking, when they're in active growth, you've got to work harder, because you'll have to water them more often. And then we've got this thing. This has actually got a name, I believe. Yeah, this is a Bialara Memoria Donald Yamada, says here. And this has got a new growth pushing on, and to scale on 1 leaf. Is that the best effort? Is that it? Is that the best you can do? 2 on 1 leaf? That is it. There aren't any others. They've probably fallen off somewhere higher up or been knocked. Anyway, this one is currently pushing out a new growth, but what it's not doing is growing new roots yet. So the old root system in here, which is not active, is in a relatively large pot. This has only got a couple of pseudobulbs that are not in active growth. So care with watering this. And the fact that I can see sponge rock, large perlite in it, it's probably been in there a while, because I haven't used that for some time. So this is getting old, this media. But hopefully, if this new growth does what it's supposed to do and matures nicely, we should get some blooms on that. But not yet. It's an immature growth. So that's that shelf done. Right, where are we going to go now? Where we're going to go now is finish my cold coffee. Yeah. Oh, that was really pleasant. Stone cold. Well, it was hot when the phone went off, and I was probably on the phone at least half an hour. Right, this is a Roseoglossum. Genetically different to normal Oncidiums. This has quite a unique growth pattern that's not obvious at first. When the pseudobulbs are new, they have these sort of bracts on the side, which look like small leaves. Oh, let's get a bit closer so you can see what I'm talking about. These bits, yeah? And the pseudobulb swells up in between them and pushes them apart. And sitting on top of the pseudobulbs is a pair of leaves, only. That's all there ever is. Now if you start looking at the older pseudobulbs, those mini leaves or bracts are gone. So what you're left with is a pseudobulb with 2 leaves sticking out the top, no other leaves at all. Now that's different because most of the others have got leaves that come from the base as well as possibly from the top. Yeah. So no blooms on this yet. It wasn't in bloom when I got it. We lost the roots on this. A slug had a field day, and it must have been quite a big slug because all the new roots were coming out round here and they all got taken off right back to the base of the plant. So I lost my root system. But since then we've grown 2 nice new growths which have pushed out roots. So we've got some new roots now. So it's not a bad root system, and it still hasn't bloomed. And because it hasn't bloomed, I don't know when it should. In other words, do the spikes come after the bulbs are completely mature? Do they come after they're mature and a bit of a rest, then it blooms? Does it just bloom in the spring? I don't know, but no blooms yet. It's a nice strong plant, you know, even though it lost its root system. And again, it's not growing at the moment. A little bit of swelling going on these bulbs, but quite honestly, this bulb here, the one I've grown, is bigger than anything that's on the plant, so that's good. And this one is bigger than some and not as big as others. Those both grew alongside each other. So it's a nice healthy plant. It's perfectly capable of blooming because of its size and strength. But I don't know why it hasn't yet. We shall see. So Rossio blossom, that one. What else we got on this shelf then? What we've got here is an Oncidium chrysomorphum. And this one, I can quite safely say, bloomed its head off. This arrived from Zana with no roots, so it's just a rootless sort of division. It then grew on at quite a rate of knots and produced a good root system, and then bloomed from every part of the plant, and they lasted a while and they were quite extensive spikes. And then since then the bulbs it had have desiccated, and the root system hasn't failed, but it's not as good as it once was. It needed repotting, it had to be done, and since then we've got 1 new growth coming. So this has got some catching up to do. It's got to get back to the strength it once had. But everywhere on the plant has now bloomed except for the new growth, so we've got to wait for that one now. But yeah, Oncidium species. I haven't got too many of those. Ugh. Right, what's this? This is a Goretia. So no, that's not what we're talking about. Right, and this is the spike poking me in the eye. This is, it's got a name. This is the Alicera Tahitian dancer. So this is a very close cross with Sotoanum in it. So scented, like a giant twinkle, I suppose you could say. Blooms very similar to the twinkles but bigger. Now what's this one up to? Well, this one's got a new growth here and a new growth directly behind it. Now what that is this is 2 plants in a pot put sort of back to back so that there will be room for the new growths wherever they came out. And typical, they both came out in exactly the same place and are squashed up against each other. But at least they're in the middle of the pot. So there's still room for another growth on both of the plants. So we've got 2 new growths coming up the middle of the pot. This one has just started to spike, and the other one over here has got quite a long spike, so we'll have some blooms on that down the line. It does follow the path of the twinkle, of the Sotoanum and sort of twinkles, on the grounds that the spikes take a very long time to grow on, produce their branching if they're going to, produce their buds, swell their buds, and eventually open. It comes into the category of don't hold your breath. That's got some cocoa husk in it. Excuse me. Again, when this is actively growing, it will be a drinker. And at the moment it is. We've got active root tips, green root tips, heading down in the pot. 2 new growths that are not full sized yet, and spikes. This is growing. So this one should not be dry for anything but a short period. So there we go. A busy little one out of the ones we've seen so far. And that is up against the glass where it gets the brightest light at the moment, being that that light is not extensive at the moment. I was just going to say, I'm sure there was another one, but not an Oncidium type. And then the biggie. Yeah, it would be nice to get some blooms on that. They're absolutely gigantic. They're sort of 5 or 6 inches across, and they've got what are called clown colours, so bright yellow, red banding, but really big blooms. On a really well grown, sorry, let me put that differently. On a good blooming, you could possibly get as many as maybe 5 or 6 on a spike, which would be a hell of a show if you think how big each one is. So right, so that's there. We've got one on this shelf. This is a mixed shelf. Why this one is on this shelf is that the spikes are heading towards the roof on some of the, the top shelf above it. What is this? This is Oncidium Cheyenne. Now it's probably a trade name. In fact, it's highly likely to be a trade name. And this is the one that did that funny thing and produced a new growth that split into 2. But it's actually progressed. Those 2 growths have actually separated and can now be viewed as a normal growth, even though they didn't start out life like that. So 2 new growths there, both with a spike, pushing on quite nicely, and remnants of scale, bodies everywhere. So it looks like the treatment's worked on there. They go they lose the white and they go a more buff colour. Beige, the colour of lions, beige, which just basically means they're dead, they're bodies, so they're not active. So anyway, we've got 2 spikes to come on here. This looks like it's going to be quite a good spike. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 blooms on this one, and that could be the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, possibly 1 or 2 less on that spike. Anyway. It's growing because the 2 bulbs have not fully swollen, so there is a bit of growth going on. They both produced roots, but I'd say that one is in a halfway house. It's not in full growth, but it's not dormant. Yeah. So again, this one's got cocoa husk in it, and charcoal, and Burnham's bark. No sponge rock, so a relatively recent repot. So that's that one. Quite looking forward to the blooms on that one. They were attractive, despite it not having a proper name. It's still a name, isn't it? Right, where are we now? I'm not going to be able to do everything because we'll be here all flipping day. But what are you with a bright yellow leaf? Are you going to fall off? Possibly. Yeah, with a bit of help. With a little bit of help. Of course it's going to fall off. Right, what is this then? This is the other big miltonia. So this is the Morelliana hybrid. And what's going on with this one then? Bark, charcoal and sponge rock, so it could have been in there a while. And the new growths have not started just yet. Yeah, the latest growths are the ones they've got spikes on, so they have already bloomed. So this one is waiting for the new growths to there's one. So it's just coming back into growth, yeah? But only just. That growth is not going to move at great speed, not this time of year. And I suspect there will be another 2 or 3 of those. And this has been planted in such a way that these new growths will have room in the pot. Now when this new growth gets a bit bigger, this bract leaf down here will be torn off right back below the base. The reason being, if it's left there, the roots will be pushed upwards and their direction of growth will be away from the base of the plant initially. Now you can turn them sometimes, but if this is removed, when they come out from that new growth, they'll go straight down in the pot. And they serve a much better purpose if you can get them to do that. So again, it's coming into growth, so not dormant, but not fully inactive growth yet. Where did that come from? Up there. What else we got up there then? That's a zygote. We've got this. This is an actual brassica. This is Santa Barbara. Came from Burnham's. Has been in bloom. It was in bloom when I got it, and it's bloomed since. Now, what's going on with this one then? I was just going to say this should be pushing out new growths. New growths will take a while to grow. They'll grow on through the winter slowly. They'll probably get to the point where they're pushing out leaves and swelling in the spring as the days get longer, and that's probably when the spikes will show if we're going to get any. So this two plants, did it actually get split? Yes, it did. So there's one facing each way, two directions of growth on two separate plants. This one did bloom, did spike there, and is just coming back into growth. So we've just got a nice new growth coming out there. Again, with the sheath, if the sheath's not round the base of the plant, these little embryo roots, which you can just see starting, possibly, will go straight down in the pot, which is where they're needed. Well, this has got a pretty good root system, including some active ones hanging out the bottom of the pot. But we've got green tips on some of these roots, so the root system it's got is in active growth. And the other lead, the front of this plant, has got a nubbin at the base that's just starting to swell. So this is just coming into growth. So coming into growth, but not in fully active growth yet. And it will grow slowly through the winter. Now again, that's a bark, coconut husk and charcoal mix, so it's a relatively recent repot. So it will, you know, at the moment it will still drain reasonably well and not hold too much water all in one go, which is what we want. Right, that's that shelf done. I'm not going to do too many more. There's another brassica right up in the back there, that's staying where it is, because I'd have to move all my miltonias to get at it. Can I do that? No. We've got others, otherwise this video is going to go on too long. And I was going to say my battery's showing red on there, but it also says I've got 26 minutes left. So not too many more plants, basically. So what we've got here is a relatively recent plant compared with a lot of the others, and this is a Shari baby. But it's a different Shari baby to all the others that I've had because it's a giant version. It has huge pseudobulbs. Now, it basically, when I repotted it, it got split into two, or fell into two, I can't remember. But I've now got two of these, and they're enormous. The bulbs on them are absolutely enormous. But this piece has a very strong new growth growing. And I'd be very surprised if that didn't bloom. But the plant itself has had a disturbance. You know, it's been repotted, which might mean it will just produce a blind growth this time round. There's two pieces in here, one piece with two giant bulbs, one piece with two giant bulbs and a new growth. So in theory, this piece with the two giant bulbs could produce a new growth, but it hasn't yet. Now that's in cocoa husk, bark, charcoal and Welsh moss. That's how I know it's a very recent repot. So that will dry pretty quick. It's only the moss that's stopping it drying really quick, which is just what I want for that, because the new growth will do a roots thing in the not too distant future. And the other one, this is the other piece. This again was two pieces. One piece here has got a distorted bulb, which is very strange, and quite a good strong new growth coming out, which may or may not bloom. And then the other piece round here is one big fat bulb and a new growth pushing on. And if you look at this new growth, I've already repotted this, but that would be a perfect time to repot that. Look at the number of little root nubbins there. Let me get my finger out of the way and let me find the dead centre of the lens. So I'm tipping it the wrong way. I'm doing everything wrong here. The base of that growth is covered in brand new root nubbins. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, over a dozen. So that's going to produce a mass of roots. They will go straight down in the pot and really boost the strength of that piece of this plant. But we may get blooms on the new growths, we may not. So out of that collective plant, which is now in 2 pots, 3 new growths, one of which is pushing on really strong, one is pretty good and the other one's relatively new. Right, coming around here, what else we got? That's a little recovery plant. That is a Miltonia William Kirsch Country Garden, it says here. It was a climber and the new growth was well out of the pot. So when I repotted it, I tipped it over, which is why those 2 bulbs look odd. In fact, all 3 bulbs look odd. But this one is producing some roots now. So hopefully that will recover. That's a bit of a recovery, that plant. Another Miltonia. And probably, yeah, the last one for today. We'll leave it at that. And that is an absolutely lousy version of Oncidium sotoanum, and the flipping thing will not grow, but it's managed to push a spike up. Now, a sotoanum spike should be so much for the battery lasting 26 minutes. It just died on me, hence bleh. Right in the middle of a word, I bet. I'll see if I can make the join between the 2 bits. It won't be invisible because it's there now. But yeah, this is a lousy version of what was once a beautiful plant with a mass of blooms on. And I ruined it basically because when it's in active growth, it really needs to stay wet. It's a hell of a drinker. And the hydration goes through the plant at a rate of knots, so it comes in the bottom and out the top. It's just one of those that moves fast. And I let it go dry. And the roots frazzled. It was in a hot period and the roots just frazzled and they will not recover. It just will not get going again. But what I've got is this. Now, that's my new growth in there. It's pathetic and I don't think it's going to get much bigger than that. So all I can do is just let it sit. But that might get no, I can't repot it. It's not in strong enough active growth. It's gone really weak and wishy-washy. And if that was a big spike, I'd cut it off. It's the fact that it's only got about 8 blooms on it. Otherwise, they're not quite open yet. But that little spike there, when those blooms open, will fill this place with fragrance if the sun gets on it or bright light gets on it. Yeah, so I ruined what was a flipping good plant just by letting it dry out and not appreciating that it drinks faster than many other plants I had. So I left it in the same watering cycle. When it was in full bloom like that, this plant should have been put separate in a place where I could get at it if necessary every day, and I blew it. So basically it lost its root system. But I won't say it's recovering, but it's not dead yet. It's still hanging in there, just about. Now, to move on to some of the other Oncidiums, apart from one big brassia in there, which is the vericosa, that one. Apart from that one, all the others are what I would call smaller plants, like that little Miltonia I've just shown you, much smaller ones. And the idea today was to go over the big ones, so it splits them into, And somebody said, how are you going to pack these plants? I'll tell you how I'm going to pack these plants. I'm going to get a box which will either be relatively flat or with quite tall sides, and I'm going to plonk it there, and I'm going to grab a plant, grab another one until the box is full. I can pick which pots I'm going to use to fill the box. So I don't have to worry about screwed up newspaper holding them in place. They will hold each other in place. Pick the box up, take it in there, put it on the floor, another box, and repeat. And with the mounts, they're going to get relatively rough treatment because they'll get a big box and they'll just get led in flat on top of each other. There's no spikes to worry about apart from the twinkles, which I deal with separately. So they're just going to get led in on top of each other. They're not going to be in there long. They're not going to squash. It's cork bark. It doesn't weigh anything. So they'll just get stacked up. Out. So plants out, followed by kit. I reckon it's a day's worth of work to get the kit out and dismantle all the electrics and get it packed up in such a way that it can all get bundled up in the car in however many loads that's going to take. But there's no weight in any of this. This is probably the heaviest thing I've got, is this workbench. And it's remotely possible it might stay here and not take it. Although I do use it. So that's debatable. But that comes apart. The boards are the heavy bit. And there's 3 shelves on there. And they just pop out. So they can just be put somewhere flat. And that leaves the frame, which on its own weighs nothing. Like these shelves, don't weigh anything. So if somebody was worried about me doing my back in, sort of thing that'll do my back in is carrying the header tank for Hurricane Hector full of water somewhere. Well, that would be a silly thing to do. What we do is we get a jug and we empty the water out and then take the empty header tank. So yeah, my little watering table here, I wouldn't want to lose that. When I said to Hannah about getting rid of the table I had, for those of you who have been around a long time, this will jog your memory. Once upon a time I had a little wooden round table here that had a green tablecloth on. I think it was actually white once. No, it was genuinely green, but it got greener as time went on. It was disgusting. When the cloth came off, the chipboard top was black with mould. It was horrible. And I said to Hannah, this is going to have to go out. This is potentially dangerous. These spores could be getting in the air and onto the plants. And she went online and found this little one for me, which is it's metal, so it'll wipe clean. And it's like a tripod. It's on 3 legs that have got a loop on, like a sort of wrought iron look-alike. It's not wrought iron. It's not heavy enough. And 3 legs, you can't get a wobble on a 3-leg table. You can on 4, not on 3. So it's absolutely brilliant. So obviously I'll be keeping that. But yeah, the stuff, the only heavy stuff I think I'm going to have to move, that I'll be moving myself, is boxes of books. And I'm not taking that many books. I'm taking my orchid and my bonsai books and not much else, because I don't read books. So, you know, why keep them? So there we go. That's large Oncidiums. Considerations via time of year. So heading into winter, not in deepest winter yet. In the UK, that tends to be halfway through December out to the end of February. That's our cold time and our short days. Get a lot of wet weather. We might even get some snow, who knows. But that's when we get our colder weather. So short days. If you've got cooler temperatures, bear that in mind. And also how big the plant is relative to the size of the pot, therefore the volume of the media, and how old that media is. Because if it's organic media, the older it gets, the more water it holds. And the more water it holds, the longer it's going to stay wet. And there's the balancing act, to avoid rotting your roots. If it's staying wet a bit too long, don't give it as much. Instead of chucking water on it, trickle. And the best way to trickle water a plant is to dribble it round the edge and watch until it starts to run out the bottom and stop. Where are all the roots in a pot? Normally, around the edge of the pot. What's the point in absolutely soaking the whole pot when the middle of the pot probably hasn't got many roots in? It'll just stay wet. Short days, cooler temps. So watch your watering. And as far as feeding is concerned, in those conditions, nothing's going to be growing fast. So yes, some feed now and again, nowhere near the levels compared to the growing season, and not as often. And for me, no boosters. So no calcium nitrate. What's the point in bumping up the nitrogen value when they're not growing much? You won't use it. CalMag, Possibly, but not really necessary with the fertiliser I've got. It's already got some in it. And whatever feed I give the plants, they probably won't use it all, even though it's a low level. So less strong, less often, to go with the reduced growth rates. And hopefully all your plants will come out the other end in the winter. I missed one. I missed a whole shelf, in fact. All right, I've got to do this one, because it's got, well, these two, in fact. Missed a whole shelf. Duh. I'll just do a couple. Right, this is a nothing. What I think this is when I said just now that I got two Odontoglossum types at the same time, and one of them had the red spot and the other one had blotches, I think this is the other one. But more importantly, it's the other one that's got a spike on. Colours are showing well on here, so these are going to open in the not too distant future. This has produced some nice roots, and we love that sort of thing. And last time I looked at it, I thought, oh, we got a new growth here that's climbing, but the roots are getting down in the pot, and we have another little spike there. Bit weak at the moment, but only just started, so we may get a succession of blooms on there. So no name, but blooms to come. And then we've got this one here, which is Cambria. Cambria hybrid. And this one is shades of purple, and it's a very attractive bloom. And what we had here was 3 strong new growths, so 3 leads. Now, one is here, and this one's lagging behind a bit. I can't see a spike on it yet, but it's highly likely it's going to have one. Moving along to the next one, this is starting to swell its pseudobulb, and its spike is pushing on quite nicely. Yeah? And then the final one, the one that pushed out first, is the largest and is swelling its pseudobulb. It's got nice smooth sides to the pseudobulb, so it's hydrated enough. Once the pseudobulbs get to almost or full size, if they start getting all ribbed, unless that's how the plant is, then it's not getting hydrated enough. And there are 2 reasons for not getting hydrated enough. You're not giving it enough, or your roots have gone and it can't take the water you're giving it. Because it's very easy to think my plant's getting a bit desiccated, I'll give it more water, and the reason is the roots are rotting and you're giving it more water. Not the best of ideas. All you're doing is exaggerating the problem instead of dealing with it. When you get a plant like that, where it's staying soggy and the roots are starting to go, get it out of that media. It doesn't matter what the plant's doing, just get it out of that media. Otherwise, it'll just get worse, and it's potentially going to rot the base of the pseudobulbs, possibly the rhizome. It'll just go. The plant will go down. Anyway, nice strong spike coming on this one. This one doesn't have lots of blooms on the spikes, but they are quite large and very colourful. So, fancy missing those 2. I will leave it at that though, because this video is getting rather long for a weekday. We don't normally do long ones on weekdays. Pop those 2 back, and I don't know what the time is. Must be coming up to lunchtime. It is lunchtime. Well, that's good. It's not very often nowadays I get to film in the mornings. It's normally afternoons. I've got other stuff to do in the mornings, but that other stuff is getting thinner on the ground. My sister was having a bit of a go at me this morning. Why don't you get some stuff packed up in boxes? I said, and where do the boxes go? I'm still here. Do I really want to be stepping all around boxes when I've got DVDs that are in a bookshelf? Nice and tidy. Yeah, but you could pack them up. And where does the box go? Why not pack them up and put them straight in the car? She thinks I'm sitting around doing nothing, which, as far as packing is concerned, I am sitting around doing nothing. It's not time to move yet. I'll pack it when I'm going to move it. Otherwise, I'll be tripping over it forevermore. There are some things I could start dealing with, I must admit, but yeah. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Sorry about the break in the middle. Battery just died on me. As I say, 1 minute it said there's 26 minutes to go, and then there was a beep and the screen went dead. I didn't get another warning. The warning signal is the fact that the little picture of the battery had already gone red with a line through it. It's telling you, really, get another battery out. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. As I say, the thing to bear in mind with your Oncidium types this time of year, short days, possibly lower temperatures, growth rate greatly reduced. Watch your watering frequency and amount and adjust it depending on how big the plant is relative to its pot size, what the media is and how old it is. All of those factors are relevant to how often you throw water on it. And watch the pot. If it weighs quite a bit, it's wet. If you pick it up and it flies up in the air, it's bone dry. Well, relatively. So there we go, a bit of Oncidium stuff for you. See you next time.